Welcome back. Cyberspace podcast. Empirical trading. Do you know what I mean? So they're like empirical trading. Welcome back.
Hello and welcome back to the Cyberspace podcast. My name's Josh. I'm your host, one member of Empirical Training. Joined with me today is Robbie and AJ, two other members of Empirical Training, all cybersecurity experts, former colleagues, still friends to this day. And we're going to cover off some of the key news stories in the cybersecurity stratosphere, whether that's developments on the threat actor side, whether that's developments on the geopolitical side, or things that just kind of stood out and took our interest over the last week or so. Interesting, this week we're going to revisit some stories. There is a healthcare organization, McLaren, who are back in the news, not for a new breach, but actually the last breach that we covered, I believe almost a year ago, is now kind of come to an end, which is interesting. We're also going to look some quick fire style stories about WhatsApp not being used by the US House of anymore because of security concerns. We're going to look at how Signal is being used by Russia to target Ukrainian officials. And we're going to look at the release of Revel as they are sentenced. They are released on the exact same day. Before taking a little bit of a deeper dive into an ad tech empire where used to disseminate disinformation and commit cybercrime using pretty clever targeted ads and also fake captures, which I feel people need to know about because this is one you could use in your daily life to stay a little bit secure. So, gents, say hello. Which of those are you looking forward to most? I know some of them you might not have heard of, obviously come across yourself, because I don't always give you the insights before I suggest the topics.
I'd say I'm looking forward to the capture stuff because that's just always the bane of my life. You're trying to pick the bridge and then the bridge disappears and it turns into a scooter and then it's just a pain in the ass, isn't it?
Yeah. And do you think we've always been training AI models with those captures as well?
I often say that, yeah. When we were in the first job where we actually all worked together, there was another analyst, and he mentioned there that is what we were doing with the capture, is training these AI models. But I don't know how much training they're getting from that, but it makes sense.
Maybe change it for the image recognition, the kind of starting bit. Yeah, I mean, and also for those who don't know, the captures are not actually about your ability to do that puzzle. They're usually about how you do the puzzle, how your mouse moves. Do you move like a human or do you move like a robot?
So don't do it too quickly.
Yeah, and shout out to chat, who are the fourth member of the podcast as always. We can see some questions in there asking about how to get into cybersecurity. We can come to that at the end, but for now we're in podcast territory. Maybe someone will get back to you in the DMs, McBride. But chat, stay tuned, joining the conversation because we're diving straight into the next one, or the first one rather. So I think let's start with a nice topical one. We like to do a little bit of politics here, and we try not to weigh in too much. But the security issues we will weigh into. So this is the US House of Congress bans WhatsApp on staff devices over security concerns. An interesting one. I think not too long ago we had the Signal leak where they added, well, not they, but where some government officials added in journalists and then talked about sensitive war plans, including strikes on the Houthis. So this felt like a continuation of that, although it's completely separate, but it's the same topic: instant messaging, people having concerns of how they're used. So, Rob, you use WhatsApp. Do you rate it as a security thing, or have you always thought it was a bit of security risk?
I guess it's only as secure as the company that creates it, right? And I guess their legislations, their moral compass. There's been situations in the past, hasn't there, where I think Meta have folded to the government or the federal companies, and that's off the back of them initially saying, WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, no one can access your data or your chat logs. But then when the police come knocking and the FBI come knocking, then all of a sudden, the decryption key is suddenly available.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, those we've kind of those are in some discussions about the back doors. I think Meta have kind of generally resisted those back doors to be added even for law enforcement. But these guys technically they aren't the FBI, but they are part of the government, or whatever. So I did think the similar is this because they know how to get into it as a government. So like, hey, maybe other governments can do that. But actually, it seems to be quite interesting because the end-to-end encryption doesn't seem to be what's being called out, and they've actually even posed some other alternatives which aren't end-to-end encrypted. Well, is Microsoft Teams end-to-end encrypted? I don't know, but it doesn't feel like it's got security at the heart of it. Wicker, Signal, iMessage, and FaceTime were other acceptable substitutes for WhatsApp. But yeah, AJ, you know this story. I know you don't because I can see your face. But why do you think they've banned it? Because there has been some changes. Here's a clue. There's been some changes in WhatsApp recently that you probably have noticed if you're a user. Some things jumped in there that
is it they've added in the new AI tool? Are they worried about the data being exfiltrated through the AI tool or something like that? Because I know there's a new WhatsApp AI, but
yeah, there's a little bit of that kind of adding the extra bit, and they also talked about adding ads in. So
okay,
it's less about what they do with the data of our chats, but apparently it's what they do with the metadata of who we are, who we talk to, and that's how they use to kind of fuel the AI or fuel the ads. So that's certainly what's suspected. So yeah, that's why they're kind of saying, hey, don't use it.
Microsoft Teams is end-to-end encrypted, by the way. Just checked.
Oh, thank you. Microsoft support would have added me then. I don't know. Okay. Everything's pretty basic things to be end-to-end encrypted now, doesn't it? But yeah, I guess that's not always the case. We'd expect things to be. So yeah. So are you going to stop using WhatsApp, boys and girls?
Well, we do recommend moving over to Signal, but I know between us that we do also have our own WhatsApp chat as well. So maybe we might have to think about moving off it back fully into Signal.
We do keep generic conversations for WhatsApp, don't we? And then any more sensitive information, it normally goes through Signal for us.
Yeah. So other reasons they cite is lack of transparency by Meta, which is interesting. I thought he was trying to cozy up as one of the tech bros. Data not being stored, encrypted at storage, if the data is stored with the metadata rather than the conversations. Software vulnerabilities as well. I think that maybe this is that, the bigger you are, the more people are looking at you. So I think maybe there's a little bit of security through obscurity here, but I'm still baffled why they say about public applications and why everyone in the White House or a government building isn't got some sort of custom built by CISA or NCA or whoever, NCCA, or even a third party business, because I know they exist. I know that you can, I've talked to vendors before who sell private versions of Signal. They don't even tell you what they are because they want people to know about them, but only your company get a version of it, an instance of it, and so you have full control of hosting it. So yeah, AJ, you probably use something like that. Imagine with your super sensitive job that we can never talk about too specifically.
That's the first I've heard of that. I've heard of companies like Wicker and things like that in the past, but I've not heard of specific tools like Signal being created for single companies.
That was a great answer. He's media trained. Don't believe him.
Yeah, gave nothing away.
Secret applications.
Yeah.
So, and you recommend Signal as an alternative, right?
Yeah, Signal has always been the one that has always cropped up anyway, even though there's always been, every time I've posted actually through, we're talking about different encrypted apps on Instagram, we always get people in the comments who are like, no, that's not actually encrypted, the government can get access to it, and it's hard to know what is the truth there. But based on the research, there's no evidence I've found that Signal is compromised, and it seems to be the best one, but I suppose you can never really know 100%, but you got a best judgment, I guess. You
could set up your own talk to two Signal instances and sniff the wire, see the network packets that go across. But there are a few, and you can check like the encryption standards. Is it perfect forward secrecy being used? But yeah, these are not the arsenal of the normal person to be able to kind of double check and test it. And I think there's always that tinfoil hat person's always going to be there. But thanks for setting me up nicely with a segue, because Signal, secure as it might be, and I think it has that reputation, which is why the Russians have seen a lot of success using it against Ukrainian officials, targeting them and sending through fake files, which essentially are fileless malware attacks. So they've been reaching out to different government officials and creating little group chats and saying, here's the latest on so-and-so and whatever. And I guess, no, I haven't thought about it, but I guess nothing like a war zone creates urgency for you to open up something and see it and act on it, right? there's probably a lot of triggers they can pull there to create that pressure that social engineering attacks rely upon. Do you ever had a dodgy message on Signal, Robbie, or you've been pretty in lockdown? No one's come across it.
I've never really had any
had one the other day.
random messages come through from Signal. Don't you have to have somebody's number to then be able to message them? So I'm guessing these attackers that are sending the phishing messages, I guess they must have those officials' numbers somehow.
Yeah, I had one the other day. So I did not accept the invite, but it was like an invite to a Signal chat from like somebody called like property management or something like that. It was something really odd. It was something like really suspicious.
Did you get a little screenshot?
No, I went off and I left it. I was going to reply and then like engage with them to see what it turned out to be. Yeah, a bit of scam baiting, but no, I didn't. I kind of left it in that instance, but yeah, I should have looked into it more.
Well, that's next time. I seem to get them on WhatsApp. The ones I get targeted with the most is people offering me jobs to like do like dev testing or whatever.
Yeah.
And basically, I think they want me to write reviews for loads of software, and then I'll give you X amount of money. I mean, if it's too good to be true, it is. But I'm worried about installing anything on my phone. So maybe that's actually because there's so many malicious apps on the Play Store and Apple Store and so on. So maybe
I actually had, talking of the WhatsApp, I had one today, and it said, "Quick heads up, WhatsApp is down temporarily due to technical issues. It should be back up in the meantime." But then it doesn't really ask. Yeah, it doesn't really ask for anything though. It just says you can reach us 24/7 on this number as usual. So I don't know if they're expecting me to reply. It's just like a random UK number, and they've just sent me that.
They're fishing with dynamite there. I think that's the opposite of a spearfish. And if anyone responds, they're like, "Oh, you're primed. You might."
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they're like, "Oh no, I can't believe you replied to it." But yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. That was literally 2 hours ago.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, so there's a lot of stuff that's come out in this investigation. The parts that are probably worth talking about here, and if you want to find out more about it, you can just Google APT28, the ones responsible for this, doing advanced persistent threats. Obviously, government linked if this is a Russia-Ukraine thing. Usually, the things that were downloaded were quite interesting. Backdoors it's a delicious document that has macros that loads a memory resident backdoor called Covenant. Covenant is basically a malware dropper or loader and downloads a dynamic library link, which, as we all know, used for fileless malware attacks, and also a WAV file, which I hadn't seen WAV files used to drop malware too much. Have you guys seen that?
WAV files? No, there was
it's an audio file.
Audio file,
yeah. But apparently it has it loads Beard Shell, which is C++ malware. It's a shellcode ridden WAV file. That's the part that I missed there. So yeah, it looks like a WAV, but it's full of shell code, and I think when it goes to run, it just executes the code. Although we can masquerade.
I guess it makes sense, doesn't it? Because as long as you're able to execute the code, I suppose it doesn't, like, you've got it, as long as the file's been executed, so it's a music file, and once it's opened, it can kind of run whatever you want it to do. So
and as we know, sometimes the says .wav afterwards doesn't necessarily mean it is .wav, right?
That could be it as well, yeah. That is very true.
McLaren. Do you remember the McLaren breach? I don't know who was on the podcast with me, but we definitely covered it about...
How long ago was this?
August 2024, maybe September 2024?
Well, the McLaren car brand?
No, they're a healthcare provider.
I don't think
they have the same name.
Yeah, I don't think I was.
Did we cover a McLaren car one, AJ, or did you just...
No, that's the only McLaren that I know of because I'm a petrol head, so I was wondering what if it was the same company.
Be interested, yeah. So I mean, I don't want to go into too much detail here because we covered off the initial kind of ransomware stuff. They've acknowledged it has been a ransomware. This is almost a year since they first discovered the breach, and they're saying that the initial attack was discovered on the 5th of August 2024. Forensic investigations determined who was impacted were only completed on May 5th, 2025. With notice circulation starting last Friday. So there isn't a huge amount of information in here, but the company is a healthcare company, 14 hospitals 2,500 beds, people who needed this stuff to be back up and running quickly. So the word on the street is they probably paid the ransom to some degree, and then the forensic people were trying to reimage, rebuild, make sure it doesn't happen again. So yeah, I mean, this I think just kind of shows that sometimes breaches, we talk about them in the news and when they first come up, but then we often don't maybe revisit when things are fully back up and operational. But that's going to be such a cost for them to have taken so long to be confident. You gents ever participated or led, Robbie, perhaps some forensic investigations? And what would you want to kind of give an overview insight into what that entails and what that kind of mentality for that is? Because you're obviously trying to find all the pieces to make sure the attacker is out of there, but it's hard to be super confident. When do you know your work is done?
Yeah, that's very tricky. That's very tricky because you could almost be half confident that you've deleted all the remnants of the malware and the files, but then something could pop back up in like a month's time. In the cybersecurity teams that I've been a part of over the years, we've never actually had a dedicated incident response team where there's the like individual forensic specialists that will go out on site and dump all of the data from a machine and get going on that and sieving through all of the
version. Yeah, the digital forensics.
The traditional way, you could probably say. But we've always assisted in incident response, so worked alongside the IR teams to help that initial root cause analysis and remediation as well, where we can, if we've got XDR tools, and we can implement mitigations and kill processes and quarantine if we can, if we've got some endpoint agent on the host that's affected. But that's something that I've always been really interested in, is like the full IR process of how those guys do it.
Yeah, it's definitely, from what I've noticed, eradication is one of the hardest parts, I find.
So AJ, you mentioned eradication, and I can see chat jumping in now with a few other steps for the IR process. What are if you could do them in order, even better points, but if you could just rattle out some of the main components, that'd be good enough for the podcast.
Yeah, it depends on obviously which plan you're referring to, but the one that I tend to use mostly is the SANS instant response plan. So you're going to have your preparation. So basically what this plan is to try and help you prepare for an incident, and also prepare how to identify it all the way to actually recovering from that incident. So you got your preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. So you'll be going through these different phases. Obviously, preparation, you're beginning to prepare how to actually get all the processes in place, all the systems up and running. And then once that's done, you're going to be from your preparation, if you've got a SIEM tool, for example, it generates an alert. That alert has been deemed to be potentially a potential incident. You'll then go through the instant response process then to contain it and kind of recover from it as much as you can. But where I mentioned with the eradication, so this is where you're going to be trying to start doing the cleanup of the infected host, for example, and you can only gather as much data as you can in terms of indicators of compromise. But this is why the eradication can be quite difficult, because there could be some artifacts that you've missed, because it is hard to capture everything during an incident, but you do have to kind of make the best judgment that you've got with the information that you've got, really.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. I think it's worth bringing people along who might not be there already, but yeah, that you got to identify the whole scope of the problem. Basically, you got to identify all the symptoms and then rip them all out, so you really are treating the core of the disease, to use a metaphor, rather than just giving someone a paracetamol for their headache when actually they've got a brain tumor. So yeah, that having the confidence that's always a tricky one for the eradication piece, because I think containment, those tend to be, they're blunt objects sometimes. Containment, I know you can get more targeted, but often it's isolate it, disable the user, and then while we investigate what went wrong with it, how they got there, but also how they could get back there. And you mentioned artifacts, I think, like talking about like persistence mechanisms, right? And backdoors they put in. They know you're going to discover their actions, and they count on you maybe eradicating the most obvious stuff, but they're going to also count on maybe you miss one of the steps of eradication. So when you do recover, put everything back online, lo and behold, the attacker pops back up. So I think, who's to say that didn't happen to McLaren? We don't know that. Maybe they did think, hey, we're good, popped up again. Or maybe they were just super duper thorough because they probably had a pretty much of a big nightmare of an environment to get through.
Yeah, the best things to try and make sure that the eradication phase is the most successful is everything that you've captured in your identification phase. So all of your indicators of compromise, any of those details, make sure that you're creating SIEM rules from those, or endpoint detection rules, whatever tooling you're using. Create those rules, because then ultimately, if one of these artifacts does re-emerge, you'll get alerted for it straight away. And that's something that can happen, and it's not a bad thing. Like, there is a chance that an attacker could stay in the network, and there could be information that you might have missed, but they might have reused some of these indicators that you could then later detect, and then reenact the instant response process. But yeah, making sure you get those back into your SIEM is hugely important.
And that's why I feel so safe with AJ out there, because he's a thorough individual, right? He sounds like you do detection, lessons learned, containment, lessons learned, eradication, lessons learned, recovery, lessons learned. Then you do lessons learned, and then you do lessons learned.
Yeah, yeah, that is how you've got to be. Like, if you want to reduce, basically what we're saying now is the anxiety about the decisions that you make, then just review those decisions as many times as you can and get different people's inputs from it as well. So if I do my analysis, for example, I feel quite confident in my analysis, but not confident enough to just say, I think, especially for a high profile incident, I'm happy for many people to review that and critique my work rather than just basing it off my decision. I think that's always hugely important as well.
It makes a lot of sense creating those detection rules with those initial indicators of compromise and pieces of metadata, because if there's like an IP address, an external one that was visible in the network, and then you remove all remnants or activity on that particular IP address, and then if you just create a quick generic rule, like cast your net fairly wide, then if it comes up again, then I bet there's a lot of SOC providers and then like internal like SOC vendors that probably aren't exercising that, which they probably should.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of the best things that I've learned since being in the kind of internal SOC instant response team, is doing that, and it has really helped. And I've been part of a team where reinfections have happened, and sometimes those reinfections aren't even from things that you might have missed. There's a chance that what we've seen is that an employee has got infected, we've cleaned that host up, and then the attacker has gone and targeted somebody else in the company using the same infrastructure. So there's certain infrastructure, for example, that they'll reuse. So if you put those detection rules in place, then you can always catch it again at a later time if they try and come at you again with the same campaign.
Good advice. Yeah, that's a really good point, because we kind of focused on reinfection being you didn't scrub it well enough, but actually it can be a whole new infection that's reinfected, because if it worked once elsewhere, there's probably another avenue in employee or bit of infrastructure you have that is similarly vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think that goes into threat intelligence then, and sharing all of that information once you're able
threat
to
intel platforms.
Yeah, with the threat intel platforms of the companies, and then that also gets ingested into your SIEM as well. So you're constantly working with everybody in your industry.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, just to bring a close to this particular part, then, we now know the numbers and the full extent of this breach from McLaren Healthcare. 743,000 patients' data was stolen, which is a lot, and we all know PHI, personal healthcare information, can be pretty sensitive. And as we were talking offline before this, gents, we talked about how it can be used to blackmail people as well. Something I think we don't really think about that often, but that's another consequence here. This is also, I think I failed to mention, their second ransomware attack I think I did mention it, but in 3 years. So hopefully they took their time with the full incident response process here, because they aren't going to come through a third time. But statistics say if they did pay the ransom, which it's suspected they did, it's likely they get infected again, just by the numbers, by nothing else. Revel. Who remembers Revel?
Revel.
Revel. Does it trigger any memories first as you Google? Because I feel like this is one of the most distinctive
yeah.
names. I always thought it was maybe one of the cooler ones. It's just one that stuck in my head as a ransomware group.
Revel. I don't know. It's Revel or Revel. I don't think.
Okay.
When you said it then, and when I had a quick Google search, I think I've always listened to it as the Revel ransomware. It's the same thing.
Yeah, this is a kid who read a lot of books when he was younger and didn't read them out loud. So if I read a word, I decide what it sounds like.
You could be right.
I always thought of it as like the ree kids, like the screech the ree.
It kind of is evil with an R, isn't it?
Yes,
evil.
Yeah, evil. That's probably 3 ways to say the same thing.
Evil.
So
what's happened with them?
Good question. So thanks for asking. These guys were pretty notorious about in 2020. I think was kind of where the peak of their attention was at, and I believe that the attention was so hot that there was a lot of governments wanted them dead. I'm sorry. Taken down. Forgive me.
I'm sure both. To be fair,
nobody's dead here. Yeah. So it was of nicer times maybe when the Russia and US would collaborate on bringing down lots of cyber criminals because these are Russian-based threat actors. So it prosecuted its own hackers and took down lots of the infrastructure. We talked about this at the time, I believe, as kind of a celebration, a joint victory for global relations and tackling cybercrime. And they've just been sentenced and on the very same day released.
Well, really?
Yeah.
Why?
Released.
Yeah, why released?
Time served.
Exactly. Time served. Robbie knows the criminal system well. There's a past life there, Robbie. Eh?
No comment.
I'm joking, yeah, guys. Before everyone tries to dox Robbie in court or whatever.
Robbie Steele, empirical training, jail.
So yeah, it was. I mean, I don't know if 5 years. We need to. Maybe it's not a question I can really answer, although maybe I should. But is 5 years is an appropriate amount of time? Because it's taken them 5 years to sentence them, and then it was determined they've been held in custody the entire time. So time served, and they are right out the door. But
what were they charged with in on that one?
Yeah. So this is where you pick the wrong article. I always read 3 or 4 different articles on it, and I'm always some of them just neglect to put the important bits in. What I have found out is they shut down before it shut down in 2021. It targeted high-profile individuals such as Lady Gaga and U.S. President Donald Trump, and some major companies as well.
Did you want to know what they've been charged with?
Thank you.
Yeah.
They pled guilty to carding, so illegal use of credit or debit card information, and malware distribution. So
okay, interesting.
That they were sentenced for.
So feels more minor than maybe it could have been, but I guess this is what they found guilty of, those things. But they were,
so they've said that they've pled guilty to carding and malware distribution. So there could have been other potentially.
I feel like if they just did carding, they probably would be all right. I think because they got involved in the old ransomware game, that's what got them.
Yeah, the tension. I think you could have escaped tension entirely. But hey, they're back out. But I mean, a few years ago, the Revel seemed to be resurfaced anyway. At least their source code is being used in new malware strains and so on. So it suggests that they never fully got them all anyway, or somebody at least had access to all the source code and all the artifacts and TTPs that were being used by Revel. So yeah, they reared their head. The Hydra keeps on growing their heads. Do we really know if we've caught the people who need to be brought to justice?
Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it? How to attribute it to exactly who was behind the scenes.
Yeah, we live in the grey, gents. We live in a grey world of cyberspace, and that's why we enjoy it. Cyberspace. Final story, and it's what you've all been waiting for, at least in the audience of 2 of Robbie and AJ that I have. Dark ad tech empire fed by fake captures. This is a Krebs on Security write-up. For those who don't know, Krebs on Security is a superb investigative journalist who does long-form content. So some really good write-ups, right? I think sometimes the news are great at giving us the big bang, 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 this happened. But if you really want to understand how cyber criminals operate, I would strongly recommend you heading over to his blog, Krebs on Security. So there's my shout-out for Mr. Brian Krebs. I think he deserves it. So does everybody else, but I just don't have the time or the capacity to reference everyone. All the time.
He'd be a great guest.
He would be.
He got some stories.
Come on, Brian. We'll stream. We'll do a 24-hour stream, and we'll just talk to you.
Yeah,
doesn't sound attractive from him,
100%.
does it? Yeah. But this man is so revered that cybersecurity companies give him free services and infrastructure, which sometimes they have to take away because attackers really go hard after him. I know the DDoS provider, forget the exact company, so I won't make a mistake and get it wrong, but they offered him free DDoS protection for his website. And then recently they had to be like, oh, mate, we're running up the credit card bills on our infrastructure because you are getting DDoS to hell and back. And so they had to say, hey, can you do someone else? So he did.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but back to this one. So I think this one that really stood out to me, because there's a lot in the story that we won't be able to cover, but it was two websites, lospolos.com, tacoloco.co. Any references to anything there, guys? Your pop culture?
That's
Los Polos Hermanos.
Yeah, that's Breaking Bad, isn't it?
Yeah. Say again, Rob?
Yeah. Los Polos Hermanos.
Yeah.
So yeah, some people, and that Krebs has pointed out this looks a little brazen from them. So maybe you're kind of hiding in plain sight. But they basically run a website that serves a long series of different specialized links to kind of ad services, right? So it's a traffic distribution system. Basically, looks at kind of cookies, information about the user, and it should serve them back up ads that make sense. If you're using Instagram, there are lots of legitimate uses of this, right? You think, hey, how come I'm seeing an ad that I was just talking about? Usually it's because there was some metadata collected on you that suggested that was what you were looking at, or that's what you were leaning towards, and then bam, it hits you. They can do this with malicious ads as well. So you ever been targeted by sweepstakes, adult dating, malicious apps, crypto scams, antivirus fraud, or malware before, gents?
No comment.
I didn't say if you'd fallen for it. I said you'd been targeted for it. Go on,
Yeah,
Rob.
it's definitely popped up every so often, but I think now we're seasoned enough, aren't we, to know, well, you just don't click on any pop-up that comes from, your mobile browser or desktop browser. But yeah, some people are not so well versed, are they?
No, and I am as well versed as you claim that I am. I have fallen for a fake website before. I think it's Christmas time, and I was trying to rush in a last minute present. I got targeted by an ad for a weighted blanket. Company didn't exist, and I checked them after I paid for it, and then realized my money was not coming back. But what was interesting about this? So it's about the serving malicious ads is one thing, but actually it's the kind of stuff that happens next. So it's quite interesting playing on the kind of psychology of people. So when it uses deceptive tactics, so the ad empire involves tricking users into enabling browser push notifications. So for the use of a fake capture, so the literal web page says click allow in order to pass the capture test, and it very much looks like, hey, are you human type of thing. So you can imagine someone who's not well versed, Rob, like self, just clicks that because they want to access whatever it is they want to access, and you'll click away any cookies or any pop-up that pops up, right? What that then does is spams them with notifications. About 24 hours or so later, so you don't see the link as to how that occurred. Push notifications incessantly bombard them with fraudulent virus alerts. Hey, your computer's infected. Call so-and-so, misleading pop-up messages, and other deceptive advertisements. So this riddles your phone. And it's what I thought was quite interesting here is that it is not just about cybercrime and like stealing your money. It's also linked to disinformation campaigns. So there's state involvement linked to this. The stuff is housed in Russia, so it's likely that it's Russian linked, who, as we know, do enjoy disseminating some information, telling your nan to vote Brexit or whatever that might be, because or Donald Trump in 2016, there was a lot of Russian misinformation campaigns linked to that also. You guys ever think you've come across any misinformation yourself, or any Russian bots in our comment sections?
Not so much in our comment sections, no, but you do definitely see a lot on X and on Twitter. I think there's a lot of bots on there, and it's hard to kind of pin down where they're coming from, but like a lot of the information doesn't, like, you do always have to cross-reference it and double check. But yeah, definitely on Twitter I see a lot of bots, not so many in our comments, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all X pretty much for me for the misinformation stories. And they're always using, like I saw one the other day, I think it was it Stephen Bartlett was the thumbnail, and he was talking, I can't hide this secret anymore, and
yeah, I've seen that. That's a campaign.
Because you see Stephen Bartlett, you're like, oh, what's he saying? And then you read the article and it's talking about some cryptocurrency investment and takes you off to some dodgy website.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up because I can kind of see some parallels with this, right? It's like using something that has credibility in order to make you make a bad choice or do what the attacker wants you to do. And so the capture is almost the Stephen Bartlett, almost the celebrity, the credible businessman in this case, captures. Have we primed people by like all these little security pop-ups sometimes that they're like, get that used to, another capture, I'll just click it, get through it as quick as possible. Even MFA pop-ups, right? You get those sometimes. Are we priming people with legitimate stuff that then means that attackers can kind of mimic it or use those behaviors to get them to do bad stuff? Because I almost can't blame people in this one, to be honest. I think if you are, many people might fall for this one. That's why I thought it was worth discussing today. And that's all we got time for. Unless you got a final thought there, AJ, I'll allow you in.
No, I was going to say that's all we got time for as well.
That's all, folks. Robbie, you got a question, or what are you going to say?
No, I was just going to say that's all we got time for today.
I'm glad you got that.
We're on the same page.
Well, it's always good to end on that kind of note. But hey, thank you very much, AJ, Robbie, for being here. Go through some of those news stories and giving your expert insights. I think we did cover quite a lot of ground there, so fair play to you both. Thank you to chat for their input and all the suggestions, particularly when we asked about the steps of IR. We got a pretty clever chat, firing a few ones out there. And yeah, thank you to the audience. If you want to find more of us, we are the Cyberspace Podcast. You can find us in all the locations you usually find podcasts. Probably the one you're listening to us right now. We do this every single week. You can watch us live on Tuesdays. We stream 8 p.m. BST, but we're about to move that to Mondays. So it's Monday live stream now, and we'll continue to release the podcast on a Wednesday unless there's something super timely and emergency we want to get out. In the meantime, you want to see more of us? Head over to www.school.com/cybersec or search Empirical Training on any of your social media platforms, and you'll see daily content from us. So get involved, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, gents.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
That's a wrap.